Roger, go for deploy.
Howdy, listeners. Welcome back to Adventure Fit Radio. Today we have Sarah Hendershot. Sarah is an Olympic-level rower. She is a really cool chick.
She's a nice, cool chick.
Tommy made it very, very socially awkward in our Tommy's tribute today.
I confess my love for her straight off the bat, having only met her over the phone.
Hard love it was.
Hard love. Really hard love.
That sounds bad.
It's well, in a sense that no, I'm not going to do that again. Oh, I mean, I'm in love with her, essentially. Yeah.
But Sarah was a competitive rower. Yeah, she started from a collegiate level, built her way up, competed at the Olympic Games, had some setbacks, and it's basically just a story of her life, I suppose. A little bit about her training and a bit about rowing and a bit about Sarah. So
This is a story of deceit.
Yes.
Of one woman against the world.
That's
and a boat.
What it was.
Essentially.
Yeah, it sounded good,
Essentially
though.
what
It was like a movie trailer.
One man, one desire.
Two men, actually. One man and one moderately
so
less
manly.
man.
One
and
man,
a woman.
one womanly man, and a boat.
And a dog.
And a dog.
Over on the seat next to us.
Named Steve.
Steve. The dog named
Steve-O,
Steve.
the dog.
One man, one medium-sized man, one manly woman, and a dog.
And
Steve. Sorry, Steve
the
the dog.
What happens next? Find out on this week's episode of Desire.
Anyway, guys, this show's brought to you. This show's brought to you by True Pride.
Which is a wealth creation service. Were you going to? This is a wealth creation service, guys, and they work with ambitious individuals, Bill, like unlike yourself. Sorry. Very good.
You're a fuckwit.
With ambitious individuals and families looking to take control, worry less, and get ahead. I use True Pride. Bill uses True Pride. The dog over there, Steve, uses True Pride.
Steve, how have you gone so far with True Pride? And how much savings per week has that actually amalgamated out to? Roughly, how much?
He actually started looking over.
Roughly, $550 a week. Roughly.
Really? It's just pretty good. Yeah, look, mate, it is, So, guys, if you want to save some money, head to truepride.com.au/ADVF and get the joining fee of $297 waived when you book via their website. We are also sponsored.
You do that always. Sponsored to you. We are also sponsored to you by Carve. It's a new sentence in the English
I suck at
dictionary.
Sponsored to you by.
Not the sentences in dictionaries. In the lexicon.
New sentence in the dictionary.
In the lexicon. I don't even know what that means, but
Under C.
Yep. C for brought to you by.
C for cook.
So Carve are a company specialising in anything digital, from building apps, designing a logo, automating your business, down to setting up your next event. Carve are the partner to be when you want to have more time to focus on the things you love and scale your business. Get 10 free hours on any project heading to carve.ph/ADVF. Rough. And we're also brought to you by Steve the dog.
Steve the dog, who's a diligent and belligerent young member of our canine society.
Diligent and belligerent.
Yeah, he's relatively cantankerous at the moment, which is a sense of negatively foreshadowing an emotion of anger is what cantankerous means.
You got a word of the day
I
dictionary
reckon we should do a start word of the day. Yeah.
I've got a word of the day thing going.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
It's on my desk.
What's today's word?
I didn't do it today.
Oh, okay.
It's a word of every second day.
What was yesterday's word?
You
didn't do it, did you?
Nah.
I didn't think it.
No, it's been good though. I've learned about 3 words
In the last 2 days?
Yep.
What's the coolest word?
Cantankerous. No, I can't remember any of them.
What does that mean, Bill?
But we're also brought to you by Adventure Fit Travel, guys. Head to www.adventurefittravel. Use the code RADIO to get 10% off any of our trips and check out everything that we're doing there. Here's the show with Sarah. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. Before we dive right into it, we're going to obviously throw over to Tommy, as we usually do, who's sitting right next to me with his guitar primed and ready. So, Sarah, here is Tommy's tribute.
Cool. Alrighty, so for all the listeners at home, my name's Tom. I'm actually new to the show. I'm an intern. Okay, here we go. I'm going to start. This is called Falling in Love with Sarah. Now, Sarah, hand a shot. There's tons of titles that she's got. To be so good, you have a massive squat. You make me feel like I've lost the plot. Because I've fallen in love with Sarah. I'm singing to an American rower. She's one goat, she makes me feel like a failure. Cause I'm fat. Cause I'm fat. Welcome to the show.
I gotta say that's about the only reason I agreed to come on, so I'm just gonna hang up now.
Okay, cool. Wait, is it because I'm fat or?
In love with
awesome.
Sarah.
I'm very,
that's very forward, man.
I know. Look.
You're married, right, Sarah?
I am. I just got married about a year ago.
Well, look,
There you
I know
go.
we've just recently met over Skype and we've been speaking over email, but there's just something about you that I just look.
There's definitely something going on here. I'm feeling some sort of vibes.
Yeah,
Some tension here.
I think we've made it feel quite uncomfortable to get off to this.
I'm up and about.
Yeah, Sarah, hey, thanks for coming on. Welcome to the show.
No, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here, especially because of that.
Cool. All right, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your what got you into rowing and some of your background, Sarah?
Sure. So, I mean, I was just an athlete growing up, played pretty much every sport that was out there. My parents introduced me to all kinds of things, and some I was terrible at and some I was good at. But I got to high school and I was a soccer player and a swimmer primarily. And in the United States, for the most part, the way that high school sports systems work is that, you know, you choose a sport for the fall, the winter, and the spring. And I got to the spring season and I didn't have a sport to play. So I was kind of trying to just decide which one I should go for. Should I try track and field? Should I do lacrosse? And my parents so lovingly kind of told me, look, you don't really have the best hand-eye coordination. Why don't you stick to something aerobic? And so they had heard that there were a lot of scholarship opportunities in college for rowing and that I was tall, so that was probably going to help. And I had no idea what the sport was, but I just went down to the boathouse my first day of spring season as a freshman in high school and pretty much fell in love with it right away. And then I've been doing it ever since.
Awesome. Sounds a bit like school that when I went through school, it was like you just would choose a sport for summer, winter, and spring or whatever. You would choose a sport just so that you would get out of school.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, like I was on the like you mentioned, you played soccer. Soccer was never big in Australia. In fact, I didn't like the sport at all. But I was part of the soccer side.
Do we?
Yeah.
I thought you used to
what
play.
was that word?
Do you? I thought you used to play table tennis.
Yeah. No, I didn't. I would have though. If it had got me a day off school, I would have played it.
Naked table tennis. Navel tennis.
So okay. So you started, and this was in like primary school or junior high or high school? Did you say?
High school. So I was 14. And that's on the early side, honestly, for rowers. There's so many elite rowers even that pick up rowing once they've reached university and they transfer it from a different sport. And so that's pretty much as early, for the most part, as you can get into the sport of rowing.
Why
right
is
around
that?
age 14.
Why is that?
Well, you kind of have to grow into the boat size. That's one of the factors. That if you're taller, it definitely makes a difference in your stroke length, and the size of the boats are, for the most part, made for young adults to adults, and that you're just going to be this tiny little human swimming in a giant boat if you were to start too much earlier than that. But for the most part, I think it's in the United States, this is particular, is that it doesn't really kick into systems until high school. That's not the same internationally. I know of a ton of girls who, have gone to the Olympics and done really well, who started at a younger age because it was more available. But there is still a little bit of that equipment factor that goes into it.
Right, because that's not 14 years old to be very early to start the sport. Doesn't sound early compared to a lot of other sports.
Well, that's when I started rowing actually as well.
You hear of gymnasts and weightlifting children, and starting from 6 years old. But
Poker athletes.
poker athletes. So cool. So what does a rower's kind of training regime look like through junior high and high school, and then obviously we'll talk about when it got a little bit more serious.
Well, for me in high school, I think honestly it's shifting a lot. Even within the last 10 years, it's shifted a ton in the U.S. But for my experience, it was 5 practices a week, Monday through Friday after school. We would row for about 90 minutes. And some of it is on land training where you're using the rowing machine, and some of it is just in the boat. But as you're getting into the sport, it's just important to take as many strokes as you can so that you can start to solidify this skill and figure out what you're doing on the water, because there's a lot of balance and skill and coordination involved in it all. So basically it's like just teaching you to get all of that under wraps as much as you can, as well as developing an aerobic base. So for somebody like me, I already had a pretty decent aerobic base just from my background with swimming, but many of these athletes are getting into that for the first time. So it's about getting somewhat aerobic volume in so that you can start to develop that ability.
Right. So what does it look like in way of like, how if you're an elite runner, then you've got to have a huge engine before you're going to get anywhere. But with rowing, is it that you've got to have good technique before you're going to get anywhere? Do they go hand in hand, the technique and the ability to grow a really large engine? Or because let's be honest, if you're a runner and you've got a freak engine, you're one of them. You can get a cardiovascular. You can get as high of a level of anyone in the world. Then you can run like a bit of a spud.
Oh yeah,
you can run with your hands tied behind your back. You're probably going to be all right. That's a huge generalisation. That's definitely not the case. But is it how much goes into how much performance is dictated by your technique and by your ability to get a really large engine?
So it's the further you progress into this sport, the more important skill becomes, obviously, like so many sports.
Yeah.
So at a high school level, you can get away with not a ton of great technique and just, a lot of strength and a lot of aerobic capacity, and you can win a ton of races that way. But what I've seen and what, is happening a ton in the US right now is that athletes at the junior level are not developing that foundation, and they're just having to end their careers in the sport early because they get so injured. And so the injury is something that I ended up dealing with a lot in my own career, but it's starting earlier and earlier now because you're actually putting your body under a decent amount of load. Just doing the rowing stroke and especially in these heavier boats where the boat is slower and the water's resistance and becomes a huge strain on your body. So if you don't have those mechanics down, you might not even get to the point where it matters to have the engine.
Well, for me, I know because I started rowing in year 8, and obviously, I'm a pretty decent rower. I mean, I've been to the Olympics and all that sort of stuff. You really
Thanks
should
for coming
be
on the show, by the way, Tom.
Yeah, you should be into.
Me and Sarah really pleased to have you on the show today.
Yeah, look, I'm excited.
It's going to be great.
I'm a little nervous about Bill's tribute, but that's, yeah, no, like when I started, and I gave it up because obviously I just couldn't handle the technique stuff. But I must have been rowing badly to the point where I got some stress fractures in my back, and then I kind of called it quits. I was like, I'm just
stress fractures in your back.
Yeah, literally got stress fractures from the back because I think how there's a big thing with rowing and pushing your butt back too much and not pulling back like a deadlift or whatever. I think I must have been pushing my butt back too far, and there was too much load through my lower back when I was doing it. But I found that there were a lot better rowers than me, and I had a pretty good engine as well at the time. But their technique was just so much better than mine was, and this was after a couple of years of rowing myself. But how much about the technique do they drill in from you from an early age, or do they want to just was it the same with me where they would just want to try to get you fit and then eventually try to work on that technique, or was it technique from the outset?
Well, so funny that you say you had that back injury because back and rib stress fractures are probably the two most common injuries in rowers.
Yeah.
Yeah, stress fractures in your ribs. Ugh, it's so crazy how many rowers I know who have had that happen. It's like a shin splint for a runner.
Oh, that's killer.
The muscles, the muscles around your ribs get so tight that they just pull until you fracture. And I mean, if you ever had a rib injury, it's the worst thing ever because you can't breathe, you can't cough, you can't sleep and roll over, you can't sneeze. So I've had one of those in my career. I had a partner who I rowed with that had 5 over the course of her elite career. So. Yeah, pretty brutal. But in general, honestly, this is what I look at as one of the problems actually in the U.S. rowing system is that we need to be focusing more on technique from an early age, and that's not always happening. It's happening in really special cases where the coaches are very well educated in the sport, have a solid understanding of the rowing stroke, and want to see longevity in their athletes' careers. But sometimes it's hard. I mean, if you have these kids and you're a high school coach, you only have them for 1 season a year. You want to get them as fit and rowing as well as you possibly can in that short period of time. And so I think what ends up happening is technique just sometimes is made secondary to trying to get these kids fit, since you can get away with it to an extent, not really teaching technique and teaching fitness in the early stages. So I hope we can change that, because it's definitely not the case actually in places like Australia and New Zealand and Great Britain. They're doing a much better job at reinforcing good technique from an early age.
Does it have anything to do with, and this is just a guess, but does it have anything to do with like different school systems and the rewards for the level of competition? Because you see, like in some sports, they'll have financial benefit for the school if the team is to go on and win something. So if that certain school group is governed by that system, then there won't be as much emphasis on technique. It'll just be let's win now because it's a financial. Whereas there'll be schools that there'll be schools that won't be the case, where they'll be able to refine technique because there's no financial incentive. Is there anything like that goes on in the sport of rowing, or?
Well, I think that that's definitely a pressure for sure on the collegiate level, absolutely. And then definitely some schools in the high school sort of level. I also think it has to do with just the history of the sport in our country. It hasn't been around here for as long, especially on like the women's side. It's relatively new. And countries like Great Britain, I mean, it's been around forever. And so they have such a deep understanding of the sport that they are approaching it in the best way possible. But then also, to be honest, I kind of think it has a lot to do with just the U.S. culture. I mean, like technique isn't sexy. Like we're a country that is really into being tough and, sometimes like just flexing your muscles for the sake of that. And I think it has a little bit to do with ego. So, yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting topic because I know that there's room for improvement as a whole for the U.S. in the sport of rowing. And I just hope that we can get it to start earlier in the process for these athletes.
It's interesting. It is also a harder sport to formulate that technique, though, because, I mean, when you're in 8s and 4s and, I mean, the movement of the boat is so dependent on the person in front and behind you that it's just kind of like, well, if we're not all rowing completely in unison as one and we're not all on perfectly today, then it's just going to go to shit, What did you start? Did you start with sculls or
the U.S. for the most part? No, I started in 8, and that's pretty common in the U.S. So I learned to row in 8, and that's another topic. Like if you were to learn in a single scull, or let's say just another 2-person small boat, I think your skills immediately going to be better developed just because those are more difficult boats to row. But for the most part, at the high school level, the 8s and 4s are the most competed in events. So sure. I learned to row in an 8.
Cool. Okay. And so what about other forms of training? So were they starting to hammer in, the effects of sleeping well and nutrition and all that sort of stuff from an early age? And how quickly did you immerse yourself in that side to it?
Oh, I didn't start thinking about that kind of stuff, honestly, until like 2 or 3 years ago.
Probably had about 10 pies and then jumped in a boat. And,
No, I mean, I think about the things I was doing to my body at, 20 years old or even at 16 years old. And I'm amazed that I could pull out the results that I did because like on no sleep, on eating like absolute crap, like just not taking care of my body, no mobility work. And it's not until I've aged as an athlete that I was forced to figure this stuff out, or I wouldn't have been able to continue to row. And then just as I educated myself on this stuff. So definitely still room to educate the rowing community on this kind of thing, because I had no idea what I was doing.
I kind of get the feeling that you learn from the hard way sometimes. It's like, oh fuck, waking up the next morning and it's like, I probably shouldn't have eaten that heroin.
I think myself, I didn't learn the hard way. I learned the just getting old way.
Yeah.
You know, I used to any sort of training, any sort of sport, I would just be able to walk onto the field or walk into the gym and just start, because always had great flexibility, always recover really well. When I was a footballer, I'd play 4 games a week at some point. And then I turned 28, 29, 30, and then it's all gone downhill from there. So, you kind of do have to look after yourself more and more. So
that's classic.
We want to talk about your row efficient program, but before we do, I want to just talk briefly about, because we haven't really touched on your Olympic experience. So how did that all? So we've gotten to the junior high level, and you're rowing 5 days a week. When did you turn the corner to say, all right, I want to make this my life and my goal to make it to the Olympics? When did that all happen?
Well, so I was recruited to go to college to row, so that was a pretty cool opportunity. Ended up at Princeton University, and I basically picked that because it was the one sport that I knew I could go to a Division I college and compete in, and I really wanted to do that. So I got to college and went from training those 5 days a week, those 5 sessions just in the spring season, to now training fall, winter, and spring, and doing between 6 and 9 sessions a week. So that was a pretty big jump. Showing up to college and adjusting to all that new stuff, and then full-time rowing. And it was my first experience with specializing in one sport and not playing multiples. So that was pretty cool. But I would say that it wasn't until probably like the 2008 Olympics, because pretty unique situation, since I was going to school at Princeton University. The women's national rowing team happens to actually be based out of the Princeton University boathouse. So I was surrounded by these women on a regular basis. They were in our locker rooms with us. So you kind of get to know them on a personal level, or just at least see that they're human and they're not just these figures on TV going and winning medals at the Olympics. And I think that exposure really kind of got me thinking, like, could I take this sport further? What are my opportunities? And do I want to give it a go?
It's very interesting, the theory of the people that you surround yourself with, that you see day to day, and that's where you'll set your ceiling. You can obviously be surrounded by the best.
Set your benchmark.
Yeah, that's right.
Of which to go from.
The best in the country, the best in the world. If you're in the same kind of training halls, and if you're in the same leagues and states or whatever. Because we spoke to Robert Cabas, who's an Olympic weightlifter, and he summed it up pretty well. He said he was born in Egypt, and his uncle and his dad hung around with the best weightlifters in the world. So he was like, okay, that's where I want to get to. Whereas if he had maybe been in Australia, where the ceiling for us is maybe get to the Olympics, Commonwealth Games, gold medals, that's where your ceiling will be. So do you think that had a big part to play in you? Yeah, I suppose you just kind of answered it then, but you being able to look at them and then say, right, that's where I know I can get to, because they're not that far ahead of me, or I can see what they do day to day?
Yeah, I do. And I think this is also kind of leading into the way that I'm motivated. And I probably in general am more of an externally motivated athlete than I am internal. I've heard so many elite athletes talk about how they can train by themselves, and it's this deep, deep motivation that gets them out of bed every morning that makes them want to be great. And I definitely have a sense of that, but it's also been my desire to be the best within the group that I'm always in that I think has pushed me the most. So having those women around me in college definitely started to open my eyes as to what kind of scores and numbers I could pull myself. But it's funny because in my high school team, I kind of stopped my growth once I became the best one on the team. And then same for university. Once I was the best one on the team, that was about where I sat. And so it wasn't until I started to see this Olympic caliber score that I was like, oh no, there's a whole nother level to push into and I want to get there. So kind of just finding what motivates you and then, using it to your benefit rather than, letting it become a deterrence in whatever you want to go after.
All right. So what do you think? What were your strengths, or what were you able to do to separate yourself from the field? Basically, obviously, getting to the Olympics is an amazing effort. Where do you think your strengths lied in helping you to, become not just a good athlete but an Olympic level athlete?
Well, so I think my college coach really taught a deep level of toughness. She was amazing at doing that, at teaching us how to push through the wall of pain that you get in the middle of a rowing race. And so that was part of it, just that I used to pride myself on being tougher than all the women next to me. But the other thing is that I'm actually a small rower as far as rowing in the US goes. I'm 5'11", like right around 160, 155 pounds. And that's pretty small because most of these women are over 6 feet, 6'1", 6'2". We had a woman on the London team who was 6'4".
Oh.
So yeah.
Wow.
And so I like looked like a child next to these women, and I had to figure out a way to compete without the size. And so I really started to go after the technical aspect of this sport, trying to become a more proficient and skilled rower to make up for the fact that I probably wasn't ever going to be quite as strong or as big. And that's something that kept me motivated in the sport for years, because I like started to look at it almost like it was a puzzle to, kind of solve, that you can figure out how to be the most efficient athlete possible, that you're just going to get so much more out of whatever it is you have.
So that's interesting. So how did you go about improving your technique then? Was it researching a lot, YouTubing, all that sort of stuff? Or was it countless hours on the ergo?
YouTubing, you think at this level, at the Olympic level, but just the pre-Olympic level, she just started this technique on YouTube.
Not before a race.
Let's see what Chris Bill has to say about the concept 2 here.
How to ergo.
A lot of it, I think, was just like asking a bunch of questions. So like trying to deeply understand, like, okay, what is it that the boat is doing? I mean, when you think about it, it's a pretty complex thing you're trying to do. Like the boat is moving underneath you and you're trying to get out of its way, and you need to keep the boat moving without stopping it. And that's the biggest struggle I see among rowers, is that people are getting in the way of the movement of the boat rather than just letting it do what it wants to do. It wants to move through the water. So I would ask a ton of questions to the point where my coaches probably hated that about me. But then also a lot of just self-experimentation. And the more that we would switch rowing partners, you learn something different from each partner. And I typically ended up being in the bow seat of most of the boats that I was put in. So that's the seat that's closest to the finish line. And in rowing, you're sitting backwards, so you don't see the finish line as you're crossing it. You see the people that you're in front of. So if I had partners rowing in front of me, I used them sort of as visual tools to figure out, what just changed to make the boat faster, and trying to do that on as precise of a level as possible. And really just like developing that boat feel, because there's a lot to understanding what I just did made the boat faster, and now I need to be able to replicate that over and over and over.
And why is it called bow? Can you shed some light on that?
Bow versus stern. So it's just the terms of the boat, right? So the 4 sides of the boat, there's bow, stern, port, and starboard.
Did you run out of questions, Tommy? I was fixing. I had an eyelash in my eye, and I had my head down. I was playing around with pulling my eyelash up. I think Tommy thought I checked out. I think.
I've actually always been interested to know why it's called bow, because obviously the base of our bow is it the bow.
The bowel.
The bow. Oh, yeah.
All right, let's
That's right. The bowel.
Sorry, man. There's an E and an L at the end there, but
yeah, that's true.
No, sorry, Sarah. So
just throw me under the boat.
Okay, cool. So, what was the actual Olympic experience like? So, how did you
shitting your bowels?
When did you qualify, and then what was the qualifying process, and when did you find out you were going to be an Olympian? And then I love to hear about what your experience was like.
So I qualified for the Olympics on June 15th, 2012. I know that date because, I mean, it was just the most unreal day.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and so I qualified in the women's pair. And that boat class in the U.S. is a trials pair or a trials boat. So you go through the trials racing process, which basically is, you show up and you have to win the race on that day. And if you win it, you are named to the Olympic team.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot more that goes into getting to that process. That it's pretty confusing. So that's like the simplified version of it. But essentially, I needed to beat a couple of women that were world record holders and world champions and had just gotten home. Yeah, had just gotten home from a World Cup and broke the world record at that World Cup.
Wow.
And they got cut from the women's 8. And so they were trying to basically find like what other opportunity was left for them to make the Olympic team. And so my partner and I were big time the underdogs in that situation and were not expected to win it. But we were ready for it and we're really excited actually to kind of be the underdogs, and came back from this dramatic 5-second deficit at about halfway through the race where my family is hysterically crying on the river banks, like thinking I've just lost my chance. And then we came back and sprinted to win.
Wow.
So yeah, that feeling was pretty insane, because it's like all the years of work that you've put into that. And it's highlighted in this one special dramatic moment. Which is different than some of the other boat classes that are named just by the coach deciding who is in the boat. So it's not, I got lucky that I got to have one of those climactic moments. But yeah, I mean, then there's about a month in between the trials process and going to the Olympics. So we had, I think it was really just 5 weeks or so before we left. That was the greatest period ever because you've made it. And I actually probably think it's similar to qualifying for the CrossFit Games out of regionals. I've heard athletes say that as well. Like that period is so much fun because you know that you're going to go. And now you get to have this ultra focused time period. So and then just being in London and racing on a world stage was so cool. And then all the partying after was pretty awesome too.
Well, that's what I actually wanted to know about. One of my questions that I wrote down was make sure you ask about the Olympic Village.
We've heard about it.
So is it like I've always just wanted to sneak into the Olympics, get a fake pass somewhere, say that I'm a badminton player that no one knows and cares about, and then just get amongst it, to be perfectly honest, just party. But
hey guys, wasn't it sick when we won the fucking badminton party? God, I don't know what that.
Anyway, so was it what was it like? When do the rowers compete? Is it early days? Is it mid Olympics, or is it right at the end? Or
we're a first week sport, which is pretty great.
That's so good.
Yeah. And I was actually the very first event of the entire Olympics. So I didn't get to walk in the opening ceremonies because I was racing the next morning.
Really?
But I was done. I was totally done by day 5. And yeah, that was the day of our finals race was the 5th day of the Olympics. So then after that's over, I came in 4th, so there was a little bit of a rebound period there of like trying to grapple with being a foot away from a medal.
Jeez, that's
but
good.
At the same time, you also don't want to waste the experience of being at the Olympics. So I pretty much didn't sleep for 4 days after that. Yeah, and only pulled back when I could tell I was going to get very sick if I didn't. And I mean, there's just like all the sponsors, all the big brands are there throwing parties. So we went to like Oakley parties and the Nike house and the Budweiser party. And there was so many fun things like that. But then you also get to go and support your teammates and watch the events and see all these awesome athletes compete in their events as well. So, it was just like a big sense of FOMO. Like I did not want to miss out on anything. And so I was going to do everything I possibly could in a week and a half.
Hey, sorry for fucking the middle of your show up. You may have heard my voice from other part episodes like Adventure Shit Radio.
You're an idiot.
Just wanted to quickly bring you guys up to speed with who we're sponsored by and who gives us money. Basically, True Pride gives us money, guys, and they are a wealth creation service who work with ambitious individuals and families looking to take control, worry less, and get ahead. Now, on a serious note, guys,
on a serious note, if you go to www.truepride.com.au/ADVF, you might get some money from True Pride too. Yeah. They might sponsor your podcast. You might get wealthy and create your own wealth through True Pride.
Look,
so
I mean, the reason you create wealth is because you get more money, and True Pride pretty much are an open bank.
True Pride have been giving us money, and it's been great.
It's been really good. Yeah. No, look, it's a fantastic service. You last time we spoke, you were just getting it all set up, Bilbo Baggins, and now I believe you have had it set up. How have you been travelling with it?
Yeah, good. So we've done a few things like, for an example, the other day, we looked at my phone plan. So my phone plan, I had a plan that was like $120 a month, but I had X amount of data, X amount of calls, X amount of whatever. And it made much more sense for me to try and negotiate to get a better phone plan.
Yep.
So I paid a little bit more money, and Craig gave me a script for negotiating with your bills.
Yep.
So he gives you like, you don't have to follow it 100%, but it gives you like, a good way to like structure a script when you're dealing with kind of people like this. So I was able to, my average phone bill was 120, but it would go to like 180, 190 a week because a month, because I'd go over with data and all this other crap. And now I've got that much data, a new phone, that much free calls, international minutes, all that stuff. Even got free Spotify,
Really?
and and I'll never go over. So it's locked in at like $120 a month. So basically, I've saved myself $60 a month there. So that's like one example of the things that they can help you out with. Just things that you wouldn't actually take into account yourself, or you wouldn't
It's
know how
little
to
things.
do. Little things. So the idea for Craig and his team at True Pride is they will get you $150 saving a week,
Yep.
so $600 a month for the cost of $97 a month. Head to www.truepride.com.au/ADVF to check out that, and you can get your free. You can join for free and get your $297 joining fee waived if you go through our website.
We are also sponsored to you by Carve, guys, which is basically the company that we use to do all the back end shitty, boring work that we can't be bothered doing. That gets you guys the show that you know and love. And it's fantastic. So now we have 3 rocking the Adventure Fit train. We got a new dude, Aaron, or Aaron, as he's probably more well-known named. He's a legend. He likes long walks on the beach, getting caught in the rain, pina coladas, and he likes setting up podcasts. And that's what he wanted to be when he grew up. But in all seriousness, guys, Carve is fantastic. So it's the little things as well that just take up a lot of time that you may not even realize you're doing. And then, before you know it, a day, a month, a week, a year's gone. And these guys take that shit out of you,
You've done this really well.
I've done this really well. But it's the little things that really help for us, guys.
They take that shit out of you, and they take it out good.
They take it out really nice. Better than a toilet bowl. So if you want to head to www.carve.ph/ADVF, guys, you can get 10 hours free on any project. And like Bill always says, guys, you can get your life back. It really helps us. We can focus on the more important stuff that we need to get happening with the podcast. And you can too with any project you're working on.
Boom. Back to the show. Oh, I have huge FOMO right now. I want to sponsor the Olympics. Adventure Fit Travel Store.
It really just makes me want to take up a sport like curling and then just curl on the first day and then party for the next 2 weeks.
We could be best in the world at curling.
We could
have you
curl.
seen that sport?
Yeah, it's a great sport. There's a lot of technique involved in curling.
Yeah, true. I actually don't even know what it is. I just looks like balls rolling across an ice.
I think it is.
Field. Yeah. That's cool. So with the Olympic Village, is it just the athletes and coaches and people that are in there, or do they have I know we don't really need to talk about the Olympic too much, but the Olympic Village too much, but is it just the Olympic athletes, coaches, and sponsors, or do they have do they open it up to the public? How does it all work?
Any plus ones?
Yeah.
So it's pretty much just athletes, and not even all coaches get access, but most do. And then any special your national governing body representatives, some of them stay there, and you're allowed to bring guests in for short day passes. So my family came in to do a little tour, but that was it. You're not allowed to spend the night. They're really strict. Yeah, they're really strict on security. So
we could get on a governing body.
What?
We could get on a governing body.
How do you mean?
Well, we could just apply.
Yeah.
We could just apply for the role.
I still think it'd be better if we just started curling.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sarah.
Sorry, Sarah. We're idiots.
I think stupid.
All right, that sounds great. So, so your plan was to compete at Rio?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that fourth place finish kind of sucked me in for another cycle. We were really close, and when I came home and I watched the tape, I saw so many mistakes that we had made and just like a ton of untapped potential, and basically thought to myself, if I put 4 more years into this, I'm just starting to scratch the surface on my potential. Like, I think I could definitely do this. And so, yeah, I mean, I just recently, I say I'm attempting to retire because I've seen so many athletes do this as well, and they get sucked back in. But I'm attempting to retire since last June. I just missed the Rio squad. But the 4 years that led up to that, I think were actually way more important and satisfying than the years that led to my Olympic berth for London. So even though I missed this one, like so much changed and so much that happened developed me as a person that I actually feel pretty okay with the fact that I didn't make the team, because I'm able to walk away with a lot of different experiences and benefits from that whole process.
So what do you think were the reasons that it was so much more satisfying? I mean, can you break it down a little bit more? Why the last 4 years was it because you'd already made it to the big stage and this was now just about bettering yourself and there wasn't as much stress? Or what was it that made this 4 years of training so much more enjoyable?
Well, there was plenty of stress because you always want to win and you want to do the best that you can. So there was still that pressure to perform on a daily basis. But essentially what happened to me was after the London Olympics, I joined back up with the group that trains out of Princeton and, was going to give it a solid go with that group. And I just kept getting injured. And it was this terrible, almost like 12-month cycle of me constantly being hurt. And there was a point where I couldn't sit for more than like 10 minutes without being in excruciating pain. Like I couldn't even go out to dinner. So there was no way that I was going to be able to sit in a boat and compete at an elite level. And the way that the insurance policy works for the Olympic Committee is that if you aren't one of the top performers in your team, then you actually get dropped off of the funding, and that includes health insurance. So I when I needed it the most, I didn't have it anymore. And I needed to basically make a decision. Like either I'm going to stop rowing because I can't stay healthy, or I need to go find an alternative way of training or somebody that's going to get me healthy. And that's what I decided to do. I left Princeton and I went basically searching for a way that I could stay healthy, that I could get pain-free, and that I could reach my potential under a training plan that wasn't going to keep breaking me. And so that journey started to basically led me all over the globe. And I got to work with all different kinds of coaches and just minds in the sport. And I trained with different national teams. Like I got to train with the New Zealand women's rowing team for 2 winters in a row. And just learned so much throughout that process. And then it really became like I was the captain of my own ship rather than being kind of like a cog within a system. And so I think that ownership over my process made it a much more rewarding experience.
So this is what I find interesting with Olympians is that because it's only every 4 years, it really has to be kind of like a lifestyle thing for you just to have that, like you mentioned, internal and external motivation before. The thing with CrossFit Games athletes is that it comes every year, so they can always go, oh, I'll put it another year. But once every 4 years is insane. How do you keep yourself motivated day in, day out when you know that, I could have a week off here and there, I could have a week off and there. It's 3.5 years away. Doesn't really matter. Like what sort of some of the stuff that you do to, apart from obviously just absolutely loving it?
Well, I mean, it is tough with only one big competition every 4 years.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a world championship every summer, so that does help. You kind of look to that as a short-term goal every year, and then it's just about setting all kinds of short-term goals for yourself. And then, I mean, on knowing in the back of your head that somebody else is doing more always. And that's often enough of a motivation, but yeah, just kind of breaking the process up, because otherwise it seems like this huge, overwhelming piece of time. And you kind of need to take it chunks at a time. We'd break up our training cycles so that there were goals along the way that we were trying to accomplish that just made it a lot more manageable that way.
Yeah, see, that one for me with someone's always doing more, it just pisses me off because it's just like, fuck it, who cares? I'm just going to eat this. Doesn't matter.
So in your travels, Sarah, and since you needed to develop or find a new style for yourself to stay active in the sport, what were you able to find, and like what do you do now that's different compared to your regular training routine pre-injury?
So a big part of it was just looking at the sport from a skilled perspective, like we were talking about earlier. Stop not looking at it as fitness is the only important thing, but also realizing that there is a very big skill in just the body and movement mechanics that are needed to accomplish the rowing stroke in the way that it's like it should be, achieved. So that was one, just completely changing my mindset on it, looking at it as a skill. And then actually, like, this is how I got into CrossFit. I found CrossFit as a tool to keep me healthy, which I think is pretty funny considering some of the reputation of, that you can get hurt doing CrossFit. I was actually using it to stay healthy because we realized there were just so many imbalances in my bodies and I was really weak in certain areas. So by using this varied program, we were actually able to turn me into more of an athlete. We turned me away from being just a specialized rower to now also having some of those athletic components back into my system. And that in turn made me a better rower because it helped me to pick up skills more easily. I think you can open this like pathway neurologically where all of a sudden learning becomes easier again if you're doing different things on a regular basis. So that was a big part of it. And then in general, I just transitioned from this really high volume, like long, slow distance approach to the sport and started to look at it more as, okay, this is a 7-minute race. We're not racing a marathon. Let's train this with some high intensity and less volume, and then just make all of it very high quality.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what were some of the imbalances and things you had to work on? Because I understand that as a rower, you're probably going to have more strength in one side from pulling, whether it's with your right or your left arm. But what were some of the specific things that you worked on?
So yeah, exactly. So I'm like an ambi-turner. I'm a port, so that means I'm always turning to my right side. So
Sure.
even still now, like my whole right side of my body is much more compressed than my left. But my glutes were totally shut off, like completely shut off, because I was super quad dominant. And so basically leaving this completely like untapped posterior chain to create power in the boat. Like I wasn't using any of it. And then the other part being just my posture. So like really needing to develop core strength and back strength so that I could sit in this more supported, strong position that would protect me from injury rather than this kind of like slumped, reaching really far position, which a lot of rowing coaches actually teach. They teach that position to try to get you to gain more length. But it ends up being just kind of like false length because, yeah, great, I can like reach out a few extra inches, but I'm not nearly as powerful in that position. So it's kind of pointless to be in that spot rather than, using the support of your structure.
Right. So when you were when you went from doing longer style rowing training to short and sharp, what's an example of a day in the gym in the longer system that you were used to compared to what you would do now? Like what are some examples of just a day? So under the like long slow distance program, it's about like 200 to 240 kilometers per week of rowing. Right.
That's split between like rowing on the water and rowing on the rowing machine. And about 50% of that honestly would be on the rowing machine, which is a totally different load on your body. So that was pretty hard because you're just dealing with that like much heavier load that can then break you down kind of faster. We would do that broken up into 2 or 3 sessions per day. And a typical session would be like a 20 to 22K row where you just go out easy and like not really focusing on anything much besides just rowing with your partner. And maybe there's a little bit of coaching direction, but it's like more than anything, it's get the miles in. And then 2, maybe 3 times a week, there would be some kind of a strength session, but it was more of like a 3x10 kind of a training, without a ton of direction. And then when I switched to this like high intensity approach, we went from that like 200 to 240 kilometers per week to more like 150 kilometers per week at our max. And we were getting a lot of our aerobic training instead through like biking and running, and actually just like metabolic conditioning in the gym as well. But that training went from, instead of potential 3 a days, like we never did a triple. We only ever did doubles.
Yep.
And it would be doubles 6 days a week and then a complete and total rest day on Sundays. And that would be 3 sessions in the gym per week. And those were focused sometimes more on just strength development and sometimes more on metabolic conditioning of like moving quickly and well under load. And then for the most part, afternoons that we weren't in the gym, we were cross training. So we were just on the water in the mornings and then just cross training in the afternoon or in the gym. And so that's a lot less time doing the actual rowing stroke, which I think makes it so that you appreciate the times that you are getting to row because it's less. So you need to make them count. But also I was slightly fresher along the way. Like I would rebound from these workouts more quickly and then able to bring a lot higher quality to my next session. So there was a big difference between those two, but I think it also really kind of fit my physiology. Like I'm definitely more of a power athlete and I can handle a lot more intensity and power work than I can long aerobic work. That stuff would just turn me into a zombie. Like I just couldn't function.
Yeah. So do you think that's you think this style of training should be implemented from a younger age to try and I suppose lengthen the length of an athlete's prime and peak condition?
Well, I think the approach with skill and the strength foundation is really, really important. Yeah. So I think looking at it that way, that every stroke you take needs to be quality and there can't be any junk miles. But there is a place for developing your aerobic base still as a junior athlete. So no, I don't think it all needs to be done with the rowing stroke. I think you can absolutely do it with cross training, but you can't completely get rid of the aerobic component because that needs to be built at some point in your career, I think, in order for you to reach a high level. But yeah, I mean, I think all high school athlete kids should be doing a very dialed in strength training program, even if it's not with heavy weights, but you're just learning the movements. You're learning how to activate the muscles that you should be using in the rowing stroke. And then you're laying a foundation for just to become a healthier human and then a much healthier rower.
For sure.
Awesome.
So what was your nutrition and diet like during that time with your peak sort of volume?
So that was pretty dialed in too. And that didn't start until I left Princeton either. So I cut all grains from my diet and all sugar and all alcohol. So that was pretty huge. And I mean, not like a strict paleo, because I found that keeping dairy in my diet actually made a big difference in how I absorbed fats and nutrients. But in general, I was very, very clean, like cooking all of our own meals and really focused on the timing of food. And then just using fat sources as a much more dense energy source, because I for sure was just burning all kinds of like junk carbs as my fuel before that, and would bonk during sessions all the time and had no idea what was going on. Like would blame it on my fitness or like just being tired or overtrained when in fact it was a nutrition issue. And so getting that dialed in made a huge difference too, because I just like had so much more energy to push in hard sessions and in long sessions.
So I'm really interested that you cut sugar out completely, because a lot of the time these sort of, I mean, you're training for that much volume, coaches and all that sort of stuff, they normally recommend having sugar or, that quick fix during your training, and then maybe something a little bit at the end before you have your protein and all that sort of stuff. Was that a decision totally made by you, or did you have some influence from some other people that were doing that? And how did you go with the withdrawal of just having all of a sudden no sugar?
Oh, it was totally brutal, awful.
Yeah.
There were about 3 weeks where I just couldn't really do anything as far as training went. Like all my numbers were shit. And just kind of had to like wait to get through that period. And so I think, it's hard to be patient for that stretch of time, but we kind of knew that it was going to end up paying dividends on the other side. So I was working with nutritionists and different doctors, and also just talking to athletes that had done the same thing, and it had really helped for. but I ended up just finding other things that like to fill in what you're talking about, like with sugar intake. So I don't know if you guys have heard of 3Fuel, but that was like my go-to during and before and after all of my sessions, because that didn't have sugar in it, but it was able to keep my energy going. And was just really big for my training in general. So finding out like what I needed to sub. So if I'm going to take out sugar as an energy source, like it needs to be filled in with something else.
And that was the fat, obviously, was it?
That was what? Sorry.
That was you using more fats as a fuel.
Yes. So that's it's a fat, protein, and carb based drink. But I think the fats were the biggest key for the way that it was affecting my energy sources.
Sure.
Right. Interesting. So, Sarah, we might get you out of here shortly. We want to go to 6 from 6 though. So, are you ready for our 3 questions from me, 3 questions from Tommy?
I think you could have done that a little better. It could be like, "Are you ready for?" It's like, "Hey, we've got like a couple of questions that we,
What's the conversation, mate? It's not. I'm not announcing the UFC.
But don't you announce? Yeah, that's true. Hey, Bill, how's it going?
Let's get ready to
Rumble.
Yes, sorry, Sarah. So, are you prepared for 6 versus 6 versus 6? 6 from 6?
Yeah, I'm good to go.
Okay. Let's try and get this out.
Long story short.
Let's try and get this out sufficiently well. All right. So, my first question, Sarah, is favorite travel destination. Can be a big town, small town, country,
Little
continent,
province, area, suburb.
It can be anywhere.
So my favorite place that I've traveled to was for rowing, actually, but it's Bled, Slovenia. I don't know if you've ever been or heard of it, but it's this tiny little place in Slovenia. There's the lake that we rode on is called Lake Bled, and it's unreal because there's this island in the middle that has this church on it, and then there's a cliff on the side of the lake that has this giant castle looking over it, and you're in the middle of the Alps. So it's a pretty unreal spot, and apparently a popular European vacation destination. But it was a pretty awesome place. I'd like to go back there.
Oh wow! I'm just looking it up here. It looks beautiful.
Give me a look.
Is that the one with like a little
whoa, that's insane.
It's like a little town church thing in the middle on the island.
The nightlife looks good too.
And we swam to it after we were done racing. We got to actually swim out to that church. So it's a pretty awesome spot.
Yeah,
it looks great.
That is awesome.
So next question from me is your dream destination. So it's same again, can be absolutely anywhere.
So somewhere that's on my list of I need to go here. I really want to go to Iceland.
Same.
Just heard so many amazing things about it. I think I need to wait until the summer to do it because I'd rather not only go for about 3 hours of sun a day. But it sounds just unreal.
Yeah, no, Iceland would be great. That's with AdventureFit Travel. We had our first trip in New Zealand, and it was a decision between New Zealand and Iceland, and we chose New Zealand just because of its geographical ease with Australia. But it's pretty much the number one place in the world that I want to get to as well. That's a great one.
Yeah.
Third question from me is, do you have any books that you like to recommend to people? They can be self-help books, they can be fiction books, anything. Do you have anything that comes to mind?
Yeah. So a book that I recently read that I absolutely loved was Win Forever by Pete Carroll. He NFL football coach and just basically broke down his coaching and sport philosophy. And I think a pretty cool perspective on what it takes to create a successful environment and just some awesome coaching strategies.
Right, it's a very strong title.
Yeah, isn't it?
Win Forever.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, okay.
Is that guaranteed?
All right, great. Tommy, you're up.
Alrighty. So, Sarah, what do you like to do in your spare time or when you have downtime? When you have some downtime?
So I'm kind of boring, but I love to cook. So I cook a lot and I'm still rowing for fun. So I guess that would be another one. And then, just sleeping, spending time with my husband.
Sleeping. Oh, bored. I may as well go to
What do you
bed.
like to do? What do you like to do when you sleep?
Yeah.
I just
I just
really
kind of think
really
about
enjoy myself.
stuff, and what's your favourite dish? You
Sleeping.
Sleeping is
Downtime.
classic. What's your favourite dish you like to cook? This is question 1, part A.
I cook a pretty good chicken marsala. If you've ever heard of that,
I've heard of
my
chicken.
Yeah, my family's Italian, so we have like our roots, in Italian cuisine. Even though like for a while I had to totally give that up while I was training. That was part of the deal, no pasta.
Ooh, yeah.
But yeah, lots of Italian food's good too.
Beautiful. Okay. Biggest role model growing up as a kid, or current role model apart from that Tom dude from Adventure Food Radio?
Growing up, so when I was growing up and I was swimming mostly, I was obsessed with Janet Evans. So she's this swimmer that competed in the '88 Olympics, and so yeah, I actually guess I kind of saw her and thought, man, I'd love to go to the Olympics someday, but thought it was maybe going to happen in swimming because that was the sport that I'd started from a young age. And she was kind of unique because she was a smaller athlete and competed in her first games when she was really young. So like the stories they tell of her are like that she was just tiny compared to everyone. And I thought she was pretty badass.
That's cool. I like that. And finally, if you could invite 3 people, dead or alive, to dinner, who would they be and why would they be there? Apart from your family.
Okay, so let's see. Peyton Manning, I think. Another one. This one you guys don't follow the NFL.
Peyton Manning's
in the US,
the quarterback for the, who is it again? Oh, no.
He was for the Denver Broncos. He just retired.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
But like legendary quarterback in the NFL, and just like such a smart guy. The way he approached sport was like he was not the strongest. He did not have the best throw, but he was a diligent like student of football. So kind of just, I think I'd love to pick his brain on sport in general.
That's a good one.
Then let's see. So the Great Britain women's pair coach, Robin Williams, I would love to sit down with him. He has produced now this women's pair that is 2-time Olympic champions. And like I've competed against his rowers, and Great Britain in general is pretty like safeguarded on their system because they know what they're doing and they're good at it. And so they don't really let too many people in to see what's going on. So I'd love to kind of like hear more from him.
Sounds like a funny dude.
Feed him some truth serum. Sounds like a funny dude. Put some truth serum in the meal there, so you can pick the brain.
Yeah. And then let's think of third. So maybe something fun like Amelia Earhart. Like hear what the heck happened to her.
Yeah.
Talk to a cool woman. Yeah.
She wasn't going over the Bermuda Triangle, was she? She just kind of went over the Pacific and never came back.
Yeah. I think it was the Atlantic.
Oh,
right?
the Atlantic.
I think
that's right.
Yeah.
Gee, that's sad, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I actually don't know anything about that story.
Amelia Earhart. Oh, mate, it's a classic. It's up there with like The Wind in the Willows.
What is it?
Oh, it's just a really sad. Cause so she was the first ever female pilot to go solo around the world or something.
Yep.
And then on this other trip, she was going along Atlanta, and then she just disappeared.
Really?
Yeah, you're right. So she was the first one to make it across the Atlantic Ocean, and then I think she disappeared while she was trying to go around the world.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
so
Okay. Other way around. Yeah, right. Yeah, fascinating story.
Shit.
Yeah.
Cool. So Sarah, just to finish up, where can people find you, and do you have anything to plug? Obviously, you've got your own your Rowficient that we should probably talk about now. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, and then where people can find you yourself and so forth.
Yeah, sure. So I just launched. Actually, Rowficient's pretty new. We launched it less than 6 months ago, but it's growing pretty quickly, which is a lot of fun, and it's essentially a rowing training program that's helping rowers maximize their performance using what we've learned in our Olympic training. So we're kind of straddling the rowing world and the CrossFit world right now, teaching CrossFitters to be better rowers, but then also teaching rowers to be better athletes. And so you can find that at rowficient.com, and then our handle is just at Rowficient. And then for me, I'm on all of my social media stuff at Sarah Hendershot, and I don't have an H after Sarah. So just one H in the handle.
Gotcha.
Easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun. It was good to talk this all out.
It was good. Hope you enjoyed the tribute. I'll sing it to you again. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just not in front of her husband.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's a bit pushy, man.
Yeah,
It's a bit pushy.
I got a little too excited, didn't I? Yeah. I could sing it to him as well.
You should get him to sing it.
I know.
He should cover it.
Yeah, that's actually not bad. I've fallen in love with...
All right.
I'll definitely have him do that.
All right. Thanks a lot, Sarah. And that's a wrap.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Right. All right, guys. If you liked our show with Sarah, if this is the first time listening, then make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you are a long time listener, please go ahead and give us a rating and review on iTunes. That would help us grow, which means it would help us get more listeners, which means it would help us get more sponsors, which means we can provide better shows for you, as in we can get some really high-level guests that we might have to travel to. We can also start our YouTube channel that we're looking at the moment.
Yep.
We can also feed ourselves much better. We won't be as hangry and malnourished during the shows. So
to give you an example, guys, for the past week I've only been eating apples. It's tough. It's a tough life. I'm not going to lie. I feel like a horse.
red apples, right?
Red apples.
Red apples have more protein.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what I looked at. I mean, I don't have a lot of money right now. And I'm
Or
worried.
friends.
Oh, I don't have any friends. I'm down.
Are you all right, man?
I'm not the best. No, I'm up and down.
Anyway, so
Okay.
Also, if you liked anything from the show that you want to check in on, guys, you want to go back, use as a resource, anything that we discussed, head to www.adventurefittravel.com/radio. That's where you'll find all of our show notes. Everything that's mentioned will be linked in there, hopefully. Also, don't forget to check out our sponsors, True Pride. Head to www.truepride.com.au/ADVF to get your $297 joining fee waived. If you decide to go ahead with those guys, phone call is free, see what they can do for you, and then if you decide to go ahead, there'll be no joining fee. Head to Carve, www.carve.ph/ADVF. Get 10 hours free on any project. Get your life back, upscale your business, and also head to adventurefittravel.com, use radio as a code, and you'll get 10% off any and all trips.
Speak to you next week.
Yo.
Discovery Roger, go for deploy.